unfortunately they moved up the ship date and they decided to save time. They were going to just cut the story.
This Marquee Dragon video is sponsored by Shattered Crystal, game codes and items.
Hello, I'm Marcus Eikenberry from MarqueeDragon.com, and I'm at the Login Conference, and today I have Toole with me. And Ann, you're like a writer for video games?
I'm not just like a writer, I am one.
Oh, man. We have somebody famous here. So what kind of games have you worked on?
Well, my background is in television. The first major game that I worked on, I was the first head writer for Stargate Worlds, and
that one never came out.
Yes.
Oh, damn! I was really excited about that game too.
Yeah. Well, it had some troubles, but you know.
Do you think it'll ever be resurrected?
Well, they came out with a PvP version of it, Stargate Resistance, I believe.
Oh,
so
I guess I missed that.
Yeah, I missed it as well, unfortunately. But I'm sure it was great for what it was and the time frame they had to do it. So
as a person who's you're writing storyline content. What is it exactly that you were doing?
The big one. What is exactly you do? Well, there's generally two times to bring in a writer. Usually at the beginning when you're still fleshing out what the game is going to be. I've been on cases where they just had like a kernel of the gameplay and they're like, okay, now make that a game. And so it's really fleshing out the story, the world, and making the gameplay fit the narrative so that it's not disjointed. And that's the best time to bring in a writer is at that point. But I'm also brought in at the end of the development cycle when most of the game is already implemented, and the goal is just to fix whatever is there and then to put the dialogue in. So a lot of times I'm brought in to do the dialogue, but I am also trying to fix the narrative so the narrative is a little more compelling than what they've actually implemented into the game.
So is this exciting work for you? I mean, do you really love what you do?
I do. I like coming in at the beginning and just imagining. I was working on this project last month, which would have been entirely original. And I was really excited about that, going from beginning to end. But unfortunately, they moved up the ship date, and they decided to save time. They were going to just cut the story. So,
oh my God!
Hopefully, the game will still be fun, but there's going to be no story in it this time. But so that was really exciting opportunity, completely original story. But I also like it when the game comes in and it's playable. So for instance, I worked on Wizard 101 and we got to run around and play in it while we were writing it, and it was a lot of fun to do it that way.
Well, it really sparks your imagination because you're in the world, you're immersed in there and everything,
I'm very inspired when they have the art or when they have like the world layouts done, because then I'm like, okay, what kind of story, like if I were going through and
that's part of the
playing
legend and lore is like what you see right there, and so that you can feed into that.
Right. The best way to tell story is in the world and in the gameplay. So if you see the world, you can imagine what the story is. And a lot of times, I can't really speak for level designers or artists. Maybe they have a story in mind, but sometimes maybe they're just making it fun and look good. And so you're taking the next step with what they've given you and making it have a narrative meaning as well.
So you mentioned something which is something I hear of often, that you actually, your contract ended early or whatnot. Do you find yourself bouncing around from project to project? I mean, how do you get steady work?
Steady work.
Or is there such a thing?
Yes, there is steady work. If you work on staff, there are a lot of writers who work on staff and writer designers, and they may be implementers as well. And there's more and more jobs out there for full-time writers. That's not what I'm looking for. I have worked on staff, but the idea is that you might have to move around a lot or might have to leave. I live
physically move.
Yeah, physically
city
move.
to city.
Yeah,
yes.
When I worked on Stargate Worlds, I moved to Phoenix for 6 or 7 months that I was working on that, and that was not an ideal situation for me. So I always say I'm happy to work on site, but my family and my friends are in Los Angeles. That's my base of attack for world takeover. So I prefer to stay there, and that works a lot for a lot of developers who are perhaps new, or they know they only need a writer for a limited amount of time, because you don't necessarily need to, if your project takes 3 years, you don't necessarily need a writer to write nonstop for 3 years, unless it's an MMO or something like that.
Right. So what, are you able to work from home for part of this?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I would think that it's a pretty independent thing for the most part. You still need to collaborate with other
Right,
people.
yes.
But that's I get a lot of questions from mostly parents who their kids want to go and become a game designer and stuff like this. This is their goal. They want to go to school to do this and stuff. And I tell them, I'm like, this is kind of an issue because there's so many people who want to do this, but it won't actually, many of them won't succeed and everything. And so it's just interesting to hear the problem. I didn't follow my own advice, and
I was like, what is
my
that
cell
noise?
phone's going off. Yeah, I felt something vibrating in my pocket. So, so if how does one get into the industry of being a writer? I mean, how did you get your first job? Writing content.
Well, as I mentioned, my background is actually in television, and you see that more and more, that people who come from film and television also want to work in games, and that's fine if you really appreciate the medium and understand it. There are a lot of people, this is all anecdotal, I haven't personally had the experience because I don't hire feature writers to write anything, but they had the experience where they just don't get the medium, and so they pay all this money for a feature TV writer, and then they get something that, like it's too long or it's not interactive, etc. So it can be a challenge if you're looking for that background to find someone who really understands the medium. So I try to downplay it a little bit that I come from that background. It's like, I come from TV, but I'm really cool, I swear.
Yeah, well, I think that it's almost the hidden art in the games. I mean, there's a couple areas. And the storyline, when you're totally immersed in it, you don't think about the storyline. You don't think about the content you're immersed in and stuff. And I think that's really cool. So it's not maybe, a lot of the kids I talk to are like, I want to design, I don't know, guns in the games or whatever, and stuff like that. But I think it's a true art. And when it's done well, you don't even notice it. So
the entire experience should be seamless, not like, oh, and why is that there?
The video games are not about us trying to, in most cases, trying to learn something or just get something done. It's about experience, and that's what I always look for in a game. Is I'm paying my entertainment dollars. I want to be entertained.
Yes.
And if a whole bunch of time has gone by and I don't even realize it, I'm like, oh, I'm getting my money's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet, it's 2 in the morning. Yay.
So, just for myself here, so maybe you can give me a little bit of advice, because I think you're a good storyteller. And so, as me on camera, what kind of advice can you give me for somebody who needs to be a storyteller? Making up, because you make up this legend and lore for stuff and everything, and
That's such a broad topic, because
I'm asking the hard questions now.
I mean, there's so many different ways to tell a story, not just the medium. You can tell one orally, you can tell it in print, you can tell it with gestures, even. So I would say one thing I've learned from being in the game industry, which is not prevalent in film and television, which I really appreciate having been in the game industry for that, is a real consideration for audience or player. It's really understanding where they're coming from and being considerate of what their needs are, wants, and experience. Because you said, it's like, I want to be entertained. And if you're writing something and it's about you, like, oh, I really need to tell this point and I really want to tell it out there, your audience may not give a crap, excuse my French.
Oh, no, yeah.
They don't care about your great magnum opus about the ethics of, sucking,
of whatever.
The ethics of sucking blood, the ethics of vampirism or whatever. If you have some great message you want to tell, who is it? I think one of the Warner Brothers is like, if you want to send a message, use Western Union, Otherwise, if you want to entertain people, make a movie. And I think ultimately you should emphasize your entertainment, and if you have a message, if there's some passionate point you want to make, write an article about it.
Yeah.
Because and ideally entertainment also has some higher meaning, some higher theme, but don't sacrifice entertainment for that theme.
So now you also, you were a speaker here.
Yes.
And what was the title of your guys'?
It was Hot Warrior Women and 6 other tips for MMO content development.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more, I'm going to link to it. This is going to be on YouTube, so
Okay.
I'll put an annotation there with a link to the other video. And you can see the full meal deal. It's like an hour-long thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of content there. And so you can probably learn a little bit more. I assume you guys were teaching
Yes.
rather than just telling.
Yes. Teaching as well as telling, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
They would send a plane with a little flyer
With a
behind
streamer?
it that said,
Oh, goodness.
Anne, call me.
Yeah.
That would be really, I would definitely call them if someone did that. But yeah, my website is, my current website is writingiswriting.wordpress.com. And my email
I'll put a link to that in the
Okay.
description.
And if you want to email me, it's therighttoole@gmail.com.
And it's Toole.
Yes, with an E at the end. Yes,
Yeah,
'cause that's my
just like your last name.
Yes.
Yes. Anne, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time. I was very entertained.
Ah, very good.
Everyone defines our lives and everything we do we're alive. I know we'll be alright, 'cause we're here.